the dynamic between Alex Grinch and Greg Schiano and how that worked. Because when Grinch was signed, I thought, my goodness, look at the work that he did at Washington State with nowhere near the talent. You talk about recruiting rankings on the defensive side, especially for Washington State, and he turned that into a unit that was Swiss cheese into a really respectable unit. One of the top 3 defenses in the Pac-12 is the Pac-12, but the Pac-12, a very good defense and a nationally rated like top 25 type defense at Washington State. So I thought, man, that is a great hire. And now he's moving to Oklahoma, and we'll see what he can do with a defense, a team overall that was much mirroring, if that's a word, the same as what Ohio State's output was, obviously, with the dynamic offense and the underachieving defense. But I just think that maybe there was a missed opportunity with not letting Alex Grinch possibly exact more of his authority on the defense, Tony.
Yeah, I would agree. You look at the safety position, and last year, Jordan Fuller did not play as well as he did the year before. Isaiah Pryor had rough moments. The safeties weren't great last year, but they were playing Greg Schiano's defense. And I agree. I don't think Alex Grinch was allowed to put his stamp on this defense. And if he was, he probably would have stuck around. And he was still coveted. Oklahoma obviously wanted him. They paid him well. So, yeah, I don't know that they really got much out of him last year. I've said this on my own podcast. I'm not sure if I've said it here, but, last year was the first year with the extra coach, and Greg Schiano had no position to coach. So he had more time than ever, maybe more time than he needed, more time than he should have had to come up with things for this defense to do. We talked to Greg Madison last month, and he said, Greg Madison is that same. He doesn't have a position to coach. And he's like, I couldn't do it. I felt like I was stealing. So I had to grab the Sams and work some with them and some with the Bullets. And I think when we talk about how complicated this defense was last year and how they've simplified it this year, I think Greg Schiano just had a lot of time to devise all of these things. Like maybe he thought he was back in the NFL, but the players have 20 hours a week that they can put towards this stuff. They're not NFL guys where they can spend 60 hours thinking and studying these nooks and crannies of this defense. So, yeah, it would be interesting to see what Alex Grinch's own staples would have been. Now, they say there were some things there, but who watches Washington State's defense to know what those, quirks and tweaks were? But, yeah, there's a reason he's no longer here, and I don't know that it's necessarily because Brian Day didn't want him, probably a mutual thing. And he felt like Oklahoma, he can control his own thing. And maybe he thought that's what he was going to get at Ohio State eventually. And that's clearly not what happened.
I've got all of Washington State's defensive schemes downloaded since 2014. They're right here in my Finder.
Right next to your FAU games that you've watched over, these last 3 years.
And Tony, by the way, you can't deliver the best on your podcast and not bring your A game over here. So don't be telling us about your great insight that you're delivering on your podcast.
Yeah. Hey, catch me anywhere else.
What do you think about that dynamic, Steve? Not that it matters now, but that maybe Alex Grinch was a resource that was underutilized.
Oh, last season was definitely a missed opportunity. Best quarterback they'll ever have in a one-year setting. Put numbers up that nobody will ever see, I don't think, again. And, they didn't win the national championship, didn't make the playoff even. So to not make the playoff because of that, really because of that one poor game that they played at Purdue, and it was offense and defense both in that one game. But the defense was an epidemic all season long. I mean, there's just no two ways about that. And you talk about you're giving up 30, 40 points to teams that, that you typically slam the door on.
They had a stellar effort against Tulane. I think they held them down to 6. That was the marquee showing.
That may have been the high water mark. They gave up 3 to Rutgers. So that was good. Maybe they got a false sense of security. They gave up 2 80-yard touchdown runs in the first week against Oregon State, and you were kind of like, okay, you've won the game. The final score was 77-31. And there was so much great that happened offensively. And then you look on defense and you gave up, these 2 long plays, and you're like, what was that? And that was just the beginning of things that would come. I mean, you had the 90-some yard touchdown run by TCU, a 90-some yard short pass and touchdown by Penn State. It was pathetic. I mean, it just really was not a good showing. I think, obviously, for Ohio State's defense the entire season. And, people say, well, there was some dysfunction there with what Greg Schiano wanted to do, what Alex Grinch wanted to do, with what Larry Johnson may have wanted to do. Who knows? Bill Davis, and so on and so forth. Taver Johnson, what did he add to the table as the DB's coach, the cornerbacks coach? I don't know. So, yeah, it was just a very messy situation from the word go. Missed opportunities, best 2 words I can think of to describe the entire season. And, I think that you only get so many chances to make the playoff and compete for a national championship. I mean, Alabama and Clemson, I guess you can pencil them in every year, as we've kind of talked about week in and week out. But, for Ohio State to be in that discussion a couple of years in a row now and not be in the playoff, those were definitely missed opportunities. And this thing's either going to go one or 2 ways. Either they're going to play their way into the playoff, or they may play themselves back into a lower position in the Big Ten. I mean, that's what everybody's predicting right now, is that Michigan's going to win the Big Ten. So, right now the tea leaves are saying that it's going to go the other direction. But if they shore up the defense with the new defensive coaches, there's no reason to believe why they can't win the Big Ten again and get into the playoffs. So we'll see how it works.
You guys have to excuse me. I'm still hurting over the Tulane game, because I remember I had the green wave and 38 or whatever it was, and the Buckeyes ended up scoring with like 12 seconds left in the game. And I'm like, why? Why?
It was a bad beat. It was a bad beat.
49-6.